Just how big of an addition has Mike Yastrzemski been? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you listen to podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering how this channel works, I bring you episodes Monday through Friday, though this week will be a little bit different. I'm going on my bachelor trip this coming weekend, so I will not be here Thursday and Friday. Plan is, though, to get an episode up very early Thursday morning. I'm going to pre-record it on Wednesday, and I did get some comments about maybe turning that into our mailbag segment, which usually is on Friday for the new listeners. So if you want it to be a mailbag Friday for Thursday's episode, let me know in the YouTube comments. If you want it to be just a normal episode, that would just mean we're not doing a mailbag this week. But definitely let me know your thoughts right below on this YouTube video. You also can check out the Locked On Royals postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo, and he goes to you live for about 15 to 20 minutes at the conclusion of every single Royals game. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. The Royals are winners of 4 in a row following their 4-3 win last night against the Texas Rangers. They sit just a half game back of second place in the American League Central, and now they are just 3.5 games back of not only a playoff spot, but the top wild card spot. Pretty excited to go over all that math in the second segment of tonight's episode. And for tonight's game, it'll be Seth Lugo on the bump. He has really struggled since signing the extension, but we will talk about if tonight can be a bounce back start for him. So that'll round out our episode this evening. To kick off the show, though, we are going to talk about Mike Yastrzemski and what he has brought to the Royals lineup. And I know that we touched on the possibility of him coming back in yesterday's episode, really all of the rentals. That included Adam Frazier, that included Randal Grichuk. But Mike Yastrzemski has so quickly become one of the fan favorites in Kansas City. What he's doing at the leadoff spot, what he's done defensively in right field, and just the overall at bats he gives. And I think that's been a breath of fresh air for a lot of Royals fans. Watching this lineup for a chunk of the season hasn't been easy when watching some of those at bats and how many of them would end on 3 or 4 pitches, or maybe they'd get into a hitter's count and they'd softly roll one over to second or roll it over to short. It's a different offense that we've been seeing since the deadline, really since the All-Star break. I mean, this is a group now that every single night out, every single game, you're expecting them to put up at minimum 4 runs. Now, it's exactly what they did last night, and they definitely left some on the table. But once again, it was Mike Yastrzemski leading off the game with a home run, or I should say leading off the bottom of the first with a home run. It's his 4th home run with the Royals and his 3rd leadoff home run. So you talk about making an impact at the top of the order. Mike Yastrzemski is doing just that. And I go back to this offseason when the Giants were contemplating non-tendering Mike Yastrzemski and LaMonte Wade Jr. Now, both of them stayed on the roster. LaMonte Wade Jr. eventually got DFA'd, and he wound up in Anaheim with the Angels, but he just has had a disastrous season. Yastrzemski stayed with San Francisco, of course, until he was traded over to Kansas City. But I loved everything about him as a player. He wasn't somebody that was going to cost a lot. He was beloved in San Francisco. I've been out there many a times, and everybody always speaks so highly of Mike Yastrzemski. I mean, he was a Giant for life. I don't believe he ever envisioned playing anywhere else, but baseball's a business, and you do get traded from time to time, or you are forced to sign elsewhere. And we'll see what Mike Yastrzemski wants to do in the offseason. But he was the perfect fit for this Royals team, at least in my opinion. It got some pushback in the offseason when I talked about it, because the average has never really stood out. You know, when you hit 230 to 235, you're not going to have tons of people pounding on your door to sign you. And for a fan base, especially with just the way that baseball has changed, we all know that it's changed. You've got the newer age fans that don't really care at all about batting average, and you've got the old school fans that still do care about it. I mean, a perfect example is you've got this MVP debate in the American League where Aaron Judge, in my opinion, should be the winner. I mean, what he's done, even when he's been out with his injury, has been ridiculous. I mean, it's another Barry Bonds-esque season offensively. And Cal Raleigh is right there. And I'd imagine that a lot of non-Yankee fans, and maybe just a lot of people in general, want Cal Raleigh to win it. But he's hitting 247, I believe is his total. Maybe it's like 253. He's hovering around 250. And there's people going, man, if we give the MVP award to somebody that's hitting 250, something's not right. But Cal Raleigh's also a catcher that has 47 home runs, is going to surpass Salvador Perez as long as he stays healthy for that, home run total of 48. He's going to have close to 60 home runs as a catcher, and that's unheard of. And because of all these other things he does defensively and from a power element, he's got a high WAR and he's got an absurd WRC plus and OPS plus, which I use a lot to evaluate a player's performance at the plate. I'm not always looking at average. I do believe it's important. So let me get that clear and right out of the way. I do believe that average is important. And with Mike Yastrzemski, somebody that hits in the high 220s and 230s, if you just saw that walking up to the plate and that's your leadoff hitter, you're going, why is a 230 hitter leading off for this team? How can you not find that 280 hitter or 285 hitter? And with Mike Yastrzemski, I mean, he was hitting 190 going into the game last night with the Royals. Then he has a multi-hit night. He's pinch hit for by Randall Grichuk. And yet you look at the numbers this year, and his OPS plus is, I want to say, 30-plus points above the league average. I mean, that is a tremendous leadoff hitter when you really break it down. That, in fact, is a leadoff hitter that can do far more damage than most leadoff hitters. It's a smaller sample size. And when he came over from San Francisco, he was right at league average. I believe his OPS plus was at 100. He still was hitting 230. And you're starting to wonder, well, why is his OPS plus or why is his WRC plus, 20, 30, 40 points above league average? How is that possible? Well, that factors in your power and your ability to get on base. And Mike Yastrzemski has been able to do that at the top of the order. He's also been, in my opinion, excellent in right field. And it has been a noticeable change in him replacing Jack Caglione. And no offense to Jack Caglione, that was a first baseman playing right field. And I just can't get enough of him in the lineup every single day. I really feel that he's the perfect fit and would love to see him back in the Royals uniform because I feel that he has been what's missing from this lineup the last 2 years, where you've got a good defensive outfielder, especially in these corner spots, but an outfielder that can do some serious damage, right, in the power department. Also can really work the count, can have an impressive 6, 7, 8, 9 pitch plate appearance. And that's just eluded them from the majority of their outfielders. Now, Kyle Isbell has been much better this year. You add that to his defense, and he's become a valuable asset to this lineup. But for your Yastrzemski, you can tell how big of an impact that he's made. Annie Rogers did a great article on him, and it was an awesome quote about his former hockey coach growing up, where early on in the game, you either need to hit somebody or get hit. And that's kind of this mentality he carries into the game leading off. I got to get comfortable pretty quickly. Why not try to swing hard and swing for the fences in some spots? Either I'm going to go down swinging, so in this context, getting hit by somebody, or I need to do the damage. I need to be the one throwing the punch, and he's now done that 3 times in leading off the game. But you just have this sense of comfort with him at the plate. Whether he's trying to start a rally or he's going to be up there to drive in runs, you've got this feeling that he's going to do something, that he is going to be able to have a successful plate appearance. And that's crazy to think about for a guy that's hitting 230. Now, you can have that with Michael Garcia and Bobby Witt Jr. And, well, of course you feel comfortable with them at the plate. That's a 290 hitter and a 305 hitter. They have shown all season long they can come through. But at the top of the order, the leadoff spot, Unfortunately, Jonathan India was not able to give that to this team. Now he's hitting in the 6 or the 7 hole, and his offensive numbers have improved a ton. And he's hitting the ball with more power. And you can just see it trickle down to each and every guy in the lineup. When you've got a table setter like that, and he can lead off the game with a bomb or with an extra base hit, and then you can turn it over to Bobby Witt Jr. and Michael and Vinny and Salvi, though Salvi's dealing with a bug right now, and he's not in the lineup again tonight. It can transform your lineup. And I don't believe I am being too overzealous here. I mean, we can notice how different this lineup is. It's a lineup you expect to drive in runs, and I believe Mike Yastrzemski has been a big, big part of that. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, let's take a look at the wild card race yet again and why tonight can really shake things up. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can listen to us on wherever you catch your podcast. Want to tell you about the title sponsor again in FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. And I will throw one more futures pick out there, and I am going to take the over on rushing yards this year for Isaiah Pacheco. Think he's healthier and think he's going to have a much better year than he did last year. Let's take a peek at the American League wildcard race and how quickly things can change in a matter of days. And if you're a Royals fan and you're already excited about tonight's game, well, there's a lot that can happen tonight if the Royals are able to win. Now, I do feel I should bring this up because this will be impacting the rest of the series. This came from Kennedy Landry, who is the Rangers beat reporter of MLB.com. Jacob deGrom is now not going to be throwing in this series. So where I was going to dive into tonight's game in the third segment and talk about how big it was for Seth Lugo to be on his B+, A- game tonight because you have Jacob deGrom waiting on Wednesday. This was reported from Kennedy Landry. The Rangers are going to skip Jacob deGrom's start tomorrow due to shoulder fatigue, per former Royal Chris Young. He went back to Texas to see Dr. Keith Meester. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And everything checked out good, more of a workload management situation. Not sure who the Rangers are going to be throwing, but now you really view this series a little bit differently. And how often have we talked about for the Royals to get into this wild card race and be about a game or two back? They're going to need some good fortune on their side. And if you're a Royals fan, dodging Jacob deGrom in a series like this is vitally important. Because now, in looking at tonight's game, if you find a way to win, if the offense can show up against Merrill Kelly and Seth Lugo can get back to form, you've already earned a split of this series, which I felt was at bare minimum needed. Because if you split and you lose the final two, though that would be a little bit disappointing after winning the first two, you would still have a 7-3 homestand. And nobody's going to complain too much about a 7-3 homestand. But taking the first two, and then you turn in tomorrow with Noah Cameron on the bump, and instead of facing Jacob deGrom, you're likely getting a bullpen game or a spot starter for the Texas Rangers. But back to this wild card race. The Royals are 3.5 games back. Cleveland is 3 games back of all 3 teams in the playoff race. And that's why I feel that things have changed drastically since the last time we talked about this, where we're looking at the Yankees and, well, you need to worry about them falling off because all these other teams are so far ahead of them. Now it's pretty up in the air. It can be the Yankees, it can be the Red Sox, and it can be Seattle. And that feels like it's added to the percentage points for the Royals actually getting into the postseason. Because if Seattle and Boston, or Seattle and New York, or Boston and New York ran away with the top 2 spots, those chances are going to go down for you. Because even though you're worried about one team, you're still counting on a team that did a lot at the deadline to play some poor baseball. And the Mariners still have an incredibly talented team with a good pitching staff. and they should have a favorable schedule the rest of the way to put themselves in a good spot. But with you being 3.5 games back, you win tonight and either New York, Boston, or Seattle loses. You think about those odds, and Seattle's in Philadelphia. Boston is trying to even up the series against Baltimore, and the Yankees begin their series tonight at George M. Steinbrenner Field in Tampa. You've got 3 teams there that all you need is one of them to lose. And if they do, the Royals can wake up tomorrow morning 2.5 games back of a playoff spot. And if Cleveland loses tonight, they did take game 1 against Arizona 4-1, you could leapfrog them. That's what's at stake tonight. And how different do things feel when you get under that 3-game mark? Even though it's not a ton, the Royals would be moving up 1 game to look at the standings tomorrow. And first things first, they got to take care of business and win tonight. But you could wake up tomorrow morning about to hand the ball off to Noah Cameron that evening, and you could very well be 2.5 games back of somebody. And best case scenario, Red Sox, Yankees, and Seattle all lose, and you win, and Cleveland does. I know it's also counting on 4 teams to lose and you to win. But, man, you talk about how different things start to feel. And you're going to need that good fortune. You're going to need things to fall your way. And I do feel that in the last week, things have started to fall the Royals' way just a little bit, especially with the way the schedule lined up. They got Minnesota, Washington, and Chicago back to back to back. And even though they went 6-3 in that 9-game stretch, now 7-3 in their last 10, the other teams that they've been chasing have stumbled a little bit. And they're going to need somebody to stumble. They don't need all 3 to do so. It would be nice, but I would count on one of those teams finding their footing, one of those teams being just good enough, and one of those teams making stuff interesting. Really, really interesting the rest of the way. And if Seattle loses tonight, they got crushed by Philadelphia in game 1 of that series. It'll be Christopher Sanchez, by the way, the 11-game winner throwing for Philly, and it will be, I believe, Bryce Miller throwing for Seattle. If Seattle loses that game, I feel they're starting to tense up a little bit. Because in the same way it was last year for the Royals, Detroit made everybody feel this way in the wild card race. But the Royals were hanging on by a thread, and they could just see Detroit constantly sneaking up the standings. And in September, they just crashed everybody's party. They certainly crashed and ruined Minnesota's party because Minnesota was a playoff team until the Tigers stormed past them. But those teams are wanting the Royals and Guardians to just bottom out. Really even more so than Boston and New York. Like, the Red Sox and Yankees hate each other, but if it meant they could make the postseason and the Royals and Guardians fall out of it, they would take it over the Yankees bottoming out or the Red Sox bottoming out. Because that's kind of a part of holding a playoff spot. Yes, you are trying to move your way up. You are trying to grab that number 1 wild card spot or to be first place in your division. But you're hoping those teams that are right under the line, that don't have a playoff spot, they just fall apart down the stretch. And your 3-game lead becomes a 5-game lead. And your 5-game lead becomes a 7-game lead. Because then you have that buffer room. You've got that luxury of having a bad week of baseball and it doesn't matter. You go back to last year for the Royals, they had a healthy lead in the playoff race, and then they lost 7 in a row in September, right when Vinny Pasquantino went down. And you're starting to think, man, if the Royals had a 1-game lead, they could be buried at this point because of a bad stretch like that. Now, tonight doesn't mean everything. Yeah, you could jump into that 2.5 games back, and you could leapfrog Cleveland, and you just wake up feeling fantastic because they've won 5 in a row, and then the Royals lose 5 in a row. That's always a possibility. But when you're going on this winning streak, you just want to know that you're making progress. You just want to know that these other teams notice you're there, that they start to sweat a little bit. You're like that car that's right in the rear view mirror, and it's just slowly gaining ground. And you got the guys that are in front that are nervous about other cars tailgating them. And the Royals are still a few cars back, or a few car lengths back, I should say. But they are steadily moving their way up. And even though they've pretty much been 4 games back for a long period of time, and they're only 3.5 games back now. It takes one good series, as we said last night, to go from 4 games to 1 game. And these next 2 days could make you think a lot differently about the Kansas City Royals and where they stand in the playoff race. I mean, Philadelphia, not an easy place to play for Seattle. The Yankees, you're going up against the Rays. It's a minor league ballpark. Crazy things can happen. And the Red Sox, they've got Baltimore, and Baltimore's offense has turned it up a notch. We also discussed that on last night's podcast episode. So one of those teams loses tonight, and you win tonight. Now you're only going to be 3 or 2.5 games back of a playoff spot, which would just feel fantastic. Winners of 5 in a row, and you're just getting closer and closer to playoff spot with about 36, 37 games to go. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, let's discuss tonight's game. Seth Lugo is going to get the ball. Can he finally get back on track? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can listen to us on wherever you catch your podcast. Want to tell you about PrizePicks, and whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. The daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and we know college football isn't far behind. You got Week 0, KU, K-State, Stanford, Hawaii. They're all in action over the weekend, so that should be an absolute blast. But before those games, why don't you download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Not sure where everybody's confidence is at with Seth Lugo climbing the hill tonight. He's facing a Rangers lineup that can do some damage. And with the way Seth Lugo's been pitching, maybe you are going to see another rough outing for him. But this is more so about the confidence. Where I stand, I've always been one of those people where until you prove it to me, until you show that you are out of a slump or you are capable of winning 5, 6, 7 in a row, I'm not going to believe in that. We can talk about it and we can discuss it, but you've got to show me you can get out of this funk. And though Seth Lugo did it last year, he had a really rough stretch at the tail end of July, I believe. Maybe it was middle of July to the middle portion of August. But even in that rough stretch, he had a couple of outings where he was vintage Seth Lugo. And we have not seen that since signing the extension. It's clearly not arm fatigue or him running out of gas in some way, shape, or form, because he's getting the start tonight. If that was the case and he needed to be pushed back a day or two, he wouldn't be throwing tonight. So maybe it's a mechanical thing. Maybe it's something that Brian Sweeney, Zach Bove, and Mitch Stetter have picked up on. But you got to get vintage Seth Lugo back tonight. And I'd already prepared to talk about tomorrow's game. I know we teased it a little bit in the second portion of today's episode. But Jacob deGrom's not throwing tomorrow. It does not mean that you can kick back tonight and, Seth Lugo, give us 5 innings of 5-run ball. You would still need this offense to do a lot of damage off of Merrill Kelly. I would rather Seth Lugo go out there and look the way he did for this entire season up until these last 7 starts or so, where he's got his command on. And that's where it all starts for me. And look for this in the first inning. What does that command look like? Is he able to control that violent movement that he has? When he's throwing that sinker to left-handed hitters, can he start it at them and it cut back in toward the middle portion of the plate? When he's got that changeup working, is it diving way down and in the right-handed batter's box, or is he putting it right on the corner? And that first inning is going to tell me a lot. And I go to the Washington series. That first inning had no command. And yes, he got roughed up with the grand slam and the RBI double, but he had no idea where the ball was going. Against Minnesota, same type of thing. And when he was missing, he was more so missing in the middle of the plate, and it was getting crushed. And what's funny is these last 2 teams he's faced haven't had great lineups. Washington has its threats, and Minnesota did as well. But in my opinion, this has the most star power that he's seen in the last 3 starts. He's going to have to worry about Marcus Semien. And even though the numbers haven't been there this year, he's got the track record. You're going to have to worry about Seager, right? You're going to have to worry about Wyatt Langford. Josh Smith can be a tough leadoff hitter. Rowdy Tellez can run into a few of them. You just want to see that command get back to where it usually is. Seth Lugo is not an inaccurate pitcher. He usually can put it wherever he wants to, hence why he throws 10 pitches. You don't throw 10 pitches and have poor command. No, that's for the 99 to 100-mile-an-hour throwers that have 2 pitches, and you're just hoping that you can be wildly effective in the game. But for Seth Lugo, he relies on precision. He relies on the soft contact. Yes, he can have those strikeout games, but more often than not, he wants those early count outs. And for the first inning, if he can just get out of there unscathed, he can have that clean 1-2-3. Even if he has a base runner or 2, he gets out of it with no runs allowed. That I feel can do wonders for the rest of the game. It doesn't mean that he's not going to give up any more runs for the rest of his outing. But these last 2 starts in the first inning, you could make a case that his outing was already over. He gave up 5 against Washington. He gave up 3 against Minnesota. The Royals did try to fight back a little bit in both of those starts, but he put the offense in a serious hole. And that's just something Seth Lugo doesn't do. He's usually the one that goes out there and gives the offense multiple chances to build a lead. We haven't seen that in the last 7-ish starts. He's got an ERA that's well over 5 in his last 7 starts. And I feel it all starts with command. Now, the good news is for tonight's game, he is facing a lot of hitters that do not see him very well. And we discussed this in last night's episode for our final segment. But for the Rangers lineup, I want to say that it's pretty much the same one as last night with the exception of one player. You've got Josh Smith leading off, Wyatt Langford hitting second. You've got Seager hitting third. Peterson is hitting cleanup. Then you've got Evan Carter in center. Marcus Semien's hitting sixth. Rowdy Tellez is hitting 7th. Then you have Alejandro Ozuna, a young kid, hitting 8th. And then you got Jonah Heim hitting 9th. The Rangers loaded up with left-handed pitching, and we've seen some of those outings where Lugo's facing lefties, and they torment him a little bit. No surprise that Bruce Bochy is going that route. But for these guys in the lineup tonight, you've got Josh Smith, who has not faced Seth Lugo before. So when he steps into the batter's box in the top of the first, that will be the first time that he's seen Seth Lugo. Wyatt Langford is 0 for 3 against Seth Lugo. You have Corey Seager, who is 1 for 6 in his career against Seth Lugo. For Jock Peterson, he's hitting .063 with a 181 OPS in 16 at-bats against Seth Lugo. Then you have, who was hitting 5th in that lineup? I believe it was Evan Carter. Evan Carter's 0 for 2. Then you've got Marcus Semien, who's 0 for 2 in his career against Seth Lugo. That surprises me a bit because of how long Marcus Semien's been in the league and how long Seth Lugo's been in the league. He's only got 2 at-bats against him. Then Rowdy Tellez, he has seen Seth Lugo twice. He is 1 for 2. And then you get to Ozuna. He is 1 for 3. And to round down that lineup, Jonah Heim is 0 for 2. The only guy with good enough numbers against Seth Lugo don't have a lot of at-bats. You've got Ozuna, the rookie, who's 1 for 3, and he would have seen Seth Lugo when he pitched in Arlington, and then Rowdy Tellez, who's 1 for 2. And I want to say that it was a double that he had in his only at-bat against Seth Lugo. So he's got that on his side. He's got hitters that don't see him as well. Even if they're going to load up the lineup with lefties, it's going to come down to how much command of the sinker does he have, how much command of the curveball does he have, and how much of command does he have of the changeup. Those 3 pitches are what I'm looking for. Because when he has that sinker on, and he's got the changeup on, it allows his best pitch, the curveball, to come into play. If you have no idea where the sinker's going or where the changeup is, you just can't command it, it doesn't matter about the curveball because guys are just going to lay off it. They know it's a buzzsaw curveball where it's going to have the 3,000 RPMs and up, and they're just going to spit on it. If it's on the bottom corner, sure, I'm still going to take it because I'm going to roll the dice that he's not going to have his command tonight. And that's why I just keep circling back to these pitches that need to be on and how early in his start he needs to show that they're on. This Rangers lineup will punish you if you're falling behind 2-0, 3-1, 2-1, 3-0. It's going to be a long night once again for Seth Lugo. But we're playing the odds here. Seth Lugo is still an established and storied pitcher, whether he was a reliever and a starter. And very few times do these rough stretches last for months on end. And I know it hasn't been months that he's been struggling, but it's been a large enough sample size where it has been concerning. He can wash away all of that with a strong start tonight. First pitch at 6:40. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we are going to recap what happens in tonight's game, and then we might do a Mailbag Thursday for our Thursday morning episode. But until tomorrow, you take it easy, Kansas City.